Another angry town, yet another ruined chance, that is. Why could things never go right? Trixie sighed deeply as she magically pushed along the small cart which she called home. Inside were all of her possessions, which by now amounted to little more than her stage outfit, a meager supply of performance props, and a ever-dwindling amount of bits. Becoming a showmare seemed like such a perfect idea at first, but she had met nothing but failure since the beginning. If things continued like they were, she would soon only have one option. She would have to do that. No, she wouldn't do that. She couldn't. That was out of the question. Things would start looking up. She'd been having the most rotten luck for such a long time, so surely good fortune was right around the corner, right? Yes, it had to be. Any day now, opportunity would knock at her wagon. Suddenly, a series of ear-splitting sounds filled the air, the screeching brakes followed by smashing and splintering of wood. Or perhaps opportunity would crash her wagon. That might work too. Wait a minute. Crash? Trixie stole her mind away from its pondering and refocused back on the road before her. A large red vehicle bearing some resemblance to a train was stopped right in front of her, but what caught Trixie's attention was the status of her cart. The front had been crashed into somewhat before the vehicle could stop, destroying the front wheels and wall. The contents inside would be easily salvageable, but the cart was ruined and would have to be replaced. Again. This was the third time since starting off. The first, of course, being the incident with the Ursa Minor in Ponyville, the second being a certain occurrence that Trixie vowed to never think again, and now this. If she had to buy another cart, it would be the last of her bits. She looked back up at the strange vehicle that had crashed into her. Surely this would be a reasonable pony that would be willing to cover the damages. And if he or she wasn't reasonable, then perhaps Trixie would just make them cover the damages. She stomped over to the side of the vehicle, putting on her fiercest scowl to show whatever bumbling idiot hit her that she meant business. However, upon facing the pony, or ponies as it were, she hesitated just long enough to give one of them the first word. "Well, look at what we've got here, brother of mine," one said to the other. It wasn't hard to believe they were brothers. The cream-colored, red and white-maned unicorns would be interchangeable if not for one's mustache and their cutie marks being somewhat different. The mustached one had almost complete apple, missing just one slice. It seemed, however, that the missing slice was the cutie mark of the clean-shaven brother. "It seems like some hot-headed unicorn, judging by the look of her face," replied the other brother, the mustached stallion. "Why so serious looking there, young filly?" he called down to Trixie. "I'm not a filly, you dunderhead! I'm a fully grown mare!" Trixie quipped back without missing a beat. "And I'm looking serious because you crashed into my cart!" The mustached brother got up from his seat to take a look at the wreckage of which had been Trixie's cart. "Oh my, our dearest apologies," he said, returning to his seat. "It seems we were in a bit of a rush and we failed to watch the road," the clean-shaven one replied. "Of course, a grown mare of your assured worldliness understands such a situation." "Unless you've been run out of town, I can't relate," Trixie scoffed. One brother looked to his other with a knowing look in his eyes. "Why, isn't that just something, Flim?" he said. The other brother turned back to Trixie. "Such a chance coincidence it is that you've described exactly what fits our current predicament. Tell me, my good mare, what might your name be?" "Wait, you were run out of—" Trixie began before realizing that the mustache brother had already changed subject. "I am the great and powerful Trixie. Who are you, simpletons?" "He's Flim," the mustache one gestured to his brother. "And he's Flam," he gestured right back. "And we're the world-famous Flim-Flam brothers," they said in perfect unison. "So, the great and powerful Trixie, eh?" Flim asked before Trixie could comment. "A great and powerful name for a great and powerful unicorn, I assume." "Of course! The great and powerful Trixie is the most magnificent, magical mare in all of Equestria," Trixie boasted. Flim let his eyes flare wide for a moment, just before grinning and turning to his brother. "Well, Flam, we've either found some pony who escaped Baltimore Asylum, or this here's a show mare." "By golly, I think you're right, Flim. Just look at that stance, that posture, the presence. She's got the makings of one of the greats. Reminds me of a young showstopper herself." Trixie was now taken aback. She, of course, realized she was amazing, but to be compared to Showstopper, the greatest performer Hoofway had ever known, now that was something. Well, I don't know about that. Now, don't be so modest, Flim replied. Really, modesty doesn't suit you at all. A mare who boasts such confidence ought to stay true to the act, Flam agreed. Trixie supposes you're correct. Trixie's expression suddenly flared as the realization swept over her. Hey, wait a minute, she shouted. Why is Trixie even discussing this with you? You need to pay for my cart. You've completely destroyed it. Completely destroyed? Repeated Flim, placing a hoof to his chest, adorning a shocked expression. Well, I don't know about that. Let's give it a look. The two brothers got up simultaneously to look at the cart. When they spotted it, they traded bleak grimaces. Yes, it does look like quite a bit of breakage you've got there, Flam confirmed. A real ruin, Flim confirmed. A dear disaster. Trixie does not care what you want to call it. The point of this is that you are to blame for this worrisome wreck. Whatever it is, it's your fault, so you need to pay for it. Flim chuckled nervously and turned to Flam, on whom a smug smile was forming. Now, wait just a minute there, great and powerful Trixie. You say this is our fault? Yes, of course it is, she replied, giving Flam an impetuous look. Well, I'm not so sure either, Flam. I mean, after all, one could say you were not watching the road either, considering you didn't try to get out of our way. And before you say so, understand that we may have incurred some damages as well. What? Trixie could hardly believe what she was hearing. Damages? How could my cart damage that monster of a machine you're riding in? Well, it's certainly true the mechanism itself is probably unharmed, but your cart's wreckage has probably scratched up the pilot. We can't have that. So? The machine itself is fine. What do you care if the pilot has some scratches? Trixie was now growing very, very annoyed at these annoying unicorns and the way they finished each other's sentences. Well, as we said before, we, the Flimflam brothers, are world famous. Traveling sales ponies, non-parallel, Flam declared. Trixie, however, had made up boasts enough times to recognize some pony fudging with the truth, and she saw it. You're full of it, Trixie cracked. Seems to me like the pot calling the kettle black, Flam shot back. But regardless of our actual fame, we are indeed traveling sales ponies. And a showmare of your stature surely knows the importance of proper presentation, spoke Flam. Trixie groaned. Even if their point was stupid, they probably wouldn't give it up. Now then, we don't want to be unreasonable here. Since it seems we both incurred damages, let's do the proper thing and agree to both handle our own debts. Sounds fair, yes? Trixie's eyes grew wide. These irritating brothers had backed her into a corner. Trixie may have been great and powerful when it comes to magic, but perhaps these ponies were really non-parallel when it came to conversation. In truth, what they said had made some sense. But she couldn't pay. Paying meant being flat broke, and that only left one unthinkable option. No! That's not fair! I won't pay for the damages you caused! Trixie shouted, trying her best to hide her desperation. The look on Flim's face, however, suggested her attempts were folly. Won't? Flim wondered aloud. Or can't? Flam looked surprisingly at his brother's accusations, but quickly hopped aboard his brother's train of thought and ran with it. Oh, please, Flim. Surely a showmare of such skill has plenty of bits to spare in the event of an unfortunate accident. I say, she must make hundreds of bits every time she passes through a town. Now, Flam, replied, not letting Trixie have a word, don't forget she did mention not so long ago that she had been run out of town on at least one occasion. Perhaps this showmare isn't so much of a showstopper after all. You mean to say that the reason this mare wants us to pay for her cart isn't just because it may not have been us to blame, but because she lacks bits to do so anyway? Flam wrapped up. At this point, both Flim and Flam turned to Trixie expectantly, daring her to respond with their glances. But Fine. You caught me, okay? I don't have bits to fix the cart. Happy? Well, great and powerful Trixie, first of all, thanks for your honesty, said Flam. Now, I don't mean to impose, but are you quite sure you have the funds for one measly cart? And if not on you, is there really nowhere you could turn? No, Trixie said firmly, not willing just yet to divulge her one last resort. Believe it or not, Trixie, began Flim. Flam and I are no strangers to being short of fun. We do all right most of the time, but one might say our record isn't exactly perfect, Flam continued. Still, our experience, there's always some pony a pony can turn to when in a fix. An old friend, perhaps? Or perhaps a trusted confidant. No friends to turn to, Trixie replied bitterly. Well, there's always family. Why, yes, a sister or a brother, perhaps? Trixie felt her legs shaking. She dared not speak. She only shook her head. Well, then, what about parents? Every pony's got parents. No parents? Flam cut off. An orphan, then? Not an orphan! Oh, I see, said Flim, taking it off his hat and placing it over his chest. Rest their souls, then. No, no, no! Trixie yelled. I just can't go back to them! I can't! Flim and Flam both looked confusedly at each other, uncertain of what Trixie meant. Finally, after a prolonged silence, Flam put two and two together. I see, he said confidently. You left to follow your dreams of being a show mare against your parents' wishes, And now, if you're crawling back, they'll belittle you. You don't want to prove them right. Is that it? Trixie wobbled in place slightly before falling to the ground in a fit of tears. Flim and Flam both drew back, surprised by the sudden reaction. Perhaps they had pressed too far. There, kid. Flim hopped down from their vehicle to stand behind the sobbing unicorn. Flim just behind him. Flim and I realize it may be hard, but surely your folks will be understanding. Parents always are. No, they aren't! My parents were always jerks. They'll just laugh at me. Laugh, just like every pony else has. By now, Flim and Flam both felt very unsure of themselves. The conversation had taken a turn they certainly had not foreseen. Flam, with no vestige how to proceed, nudged Flim in hopes that he would come up with a better idea. Trixie, if I may change the subject, said Flim, why is it that your show hasn't worked out? Trixie looked up from the puddle of tears forming on the ground beside her. What do you mean? I'm simply wondering why it is that you haven't had much success as a show mare. What's wrong with your act? I don't know that, Trixie grumbled. And if I knew what was wrong, I'd change it, wouldn't I? Well, let me tell you what I think, offered Flim. I think you're on the right track, but maybe you've made one little mistake while planning it all out. What, is it the name? No, the name is good. Flim extended a hoof to Trixie, who took it and hoisted herself back up. A powerful name for a pony with a powerful personality, at the very least. I think perhaps your problem is that you're trying for a one-pony show. You know, I wasn't lying when I saw a young showstopper in you, Flam chimed in. But she wasn't a one-mare act. She always had a strong cast to fall back on. So what you're saying I need is... Trixie trailed off, looking for the right word. An accomplice, posed Flim. A partner, Flam recommended. An associate. A collaborator. A helper. An aide. A co-worker. Flam looked over to Trixie, who was glaring at them. I think she gets the point, Flim. Trixie does not need a partner. Trixie is just fine on her own. Now, Trixie, there's nothing wrong with having some pony to rely on, Flam countered. Why, I would be in a worse state than you if it weren't for Flim here always having my back when I'm about to fall short. And I, for one, can always count on my brother Flam to push me along whenever I hit a bump in the road. And we're not the only ones. Why, even Celestia herself benefits from having her sister Luna at her side. You could even say that Flim and I were recently shown an important lesson in the value of teamwork a few towns back by some certain Ponyville ponies. Ponyville? A scowl crossed Trixie's face. Familiar with the place, then? Flim grinned knowingly. A harsh group, wouldn't you say? A judgmental lot, said Flim. Flim trailed off, racking his brain for another phrase. A tough crowd. Ah, yes, just the term I sought. A real tough crowd if I ever saw one, Flim replied. Both Flim and Flam shared a collective grin at Trixie's input. But an admirable bunch of ponies all the same. They certainly care for their own.
Indeed they do, Flim affirmed. I can hardly imagine the lengths those ponies might go to protect each other and their precious home. They'd face a dragon, Flam boasted. They'd brave a diamond dog mine, said Flim. They'd do battle with Discord himself. Or even more terrifying, stand up to Celestia. Perhaps brave an army of changelings. Maybe even drive out a pair of dwindling sales ponies, Trixie brought up wryly. Very funny, great and powerful Trixie. Are you sure you aren't better suited for a comedy act? After all, you did say every pony laughs at you. Trixie glared at them. That was cold, Flim. The point is, Trixie, you shouldn't think that your relying on others makes you weak. On the contrary, it is when we work together that we're capable of something which one pony could never hope to achieve on their own. Even if that working together is just some eager support from a true friend. Trixie does not see how any of this advice helps me, Trixie sighed, her mood dampening further. I haven't made any true friends, remember? Well, why not start now, replied Flim. We may just be having special on true friends, said Flam. 2 for 1, the first is free. Trixie smiled softly, the meaning of the brothers' words not lost on her. Now, about your situation, Flim began, changing the subject once more. It would be wrong of us to leave you to your own devices with your cart in such a poor state. What do you say we help you out of this jam? Really? Trixie asked, surprised that the brothers had turned from seemingly selfish to rather generous over the course of the conversation. What are friends for? Flim said, flashing a warm smile. Come aboard, Trixie. We'll give you a ride wherever you want to go. Trixie agreed happily, and after quickly gathering up her few belongings from her ruined cart and packing them into a bundle, she climbed aboard the Flim Flam Brothers' peculiar mode of transport. So, where to, great and powerful Trixie? Perhaps someplace an infamous pony such as yourself could muster up a few companions and learn a thing or two about friendship? Trixie thought on this. In the past, destinations had always been wherever she hadn't yet alienated herself. Was that the best idea, though? She could go anywhere. Where was the one place that would most likely give her a true, fresh start? What about Ponyville? She finally answered. The brothers looked at each other with only a small amount of shock, though it clearly hadn't been the first answer they expected. Well, now, that's not such a bad plan. A harsh group, perhaps, but I would be willing to bet they're a forgiving one as well, Flam responded. And surely a once lonely but powerful unicorn could learn a thing or two about friendship. There's even a chance you wouldn't be the first. Yes, I do believe there may be an opportunity in that community yet, Flam added confidently. Ready, Flim? Ready, Flam! Both tall unicorns' horns glowed with a green magical aura, and the entire vehicle sprang to life, and a moment later they were off. It moved much faster than Trixie would have expected based on its size. The scenery seemed to fly by as they raced along the road. Do you really think Trixie can? She asked the 2 brothers sitting beside her. Make friends in Ponyville, that is. What if they just drive me back out? It's a long road ahead, replied Flam, but making friends is a lot like being a sales pony, except you're trying to sell yourself instead of a product. And tell you what, sister of mine, said Flim, you've certainly sold yourself to us. Flam nodded in agreement. And if you could sell yourself to sales ponies non-parallel, then we say you could sell yourself to Ponyville too. Trixie grinned, glad for the brothers' encouragement. She looked forward to the wind beating at her face and whipping back her mane, her smile becoming wild with joy. In that moment, she felt ready to face the whole world, much less one town of ponies. Another town, a second chance.